Is this thing working? Are we live? It looks like we're live. And if history has anything to say about this, we don't know how far along we're going to make it in this live before we lose connectivity. So let's dive into this straight away. If this is your first time watching my channel, thanks for stopping by. I appreciate you. My channel really is nothing more than a background noise generator, usually just talking about things engine related, car related, and mostly motorcycle related. So that's what I'm up to on this channel. Typically, guys watching this are doing something a lot more interesting, whatever it is that I'm talking about. But for those of you that stick around and actually listen, this is a fun way for me to interact directly with you. The live show allows me to also work through different show ideas, different video ideas, I should say. Sometimes those really don't translate over to a standalone video. And so I'll just kind of do it on the live show because it makes it easier. So anyway, diving back into the topic, look, have you noticed something? Have you picked out this little factoid? The muscle car seems to be going away. We have lost the Challenger and the Charger officially, but the Mustang, the sales of that car are not doing all that well. Matter of fact, Mustang is having one of the worst sales years ever. Now, there's mitigating factors to that. We can get into it. But if you look down the list of cars that are available today, or at least that are not available today, that were just not that long ago, the Camaro is one of those cars. And that is really where I'm going with this. Look at what we used to have to work with. And now look at what we don't. It seems like manufacturers are starting to skate away from that particular type of vehicle. And for whatever reason, it is continuously and steadily fallen out of fashion. Now, for a lot of guys, that's a real problem. I mean, this is a very passion-oriented type of a thing. The car hobby is a major, from an industrial standpoint, the aftermarket side is a huge business, billions of dollars a year, or at least it was. But now that cars are becoming more and more difficult to tune and more expensive to purchase, the hobby as it is, well, just a hobby. It used to be a lifestyle for some guys. I mean, how many of y'all can remember working with your uncles or your granddads or your dads, your brothers, cousins, whatever, on a particular car? You all worked together on the thing. It was really more communal than anything else. But it wasn't like hard to do that, right? It was easy. The cars were easier to work on and it was easier on the pocketbook. But now if you look at how much these cars cost, I mean, they cost the same amount, if not more, than the average 40-hour work week, college educated, salaried individual makes in a year. $40,000, $50,000, $60,000. Yeah, they cost that much. And that's on the low side. You know, some of the Scat Packs and the Mustangs, well, they were getting closer to $50,000, $60,000 and up. Can you believe there were some Scat Packs at one time going for $70,000? Blows my mind to even think of that, much less the Hellcat variants. So for a lot of guys, I feel like this whole experiment of the muscle car has kind of come and gone, and not too many people are getting into this hobby, and those that are generational are leaving, and they're not bringing everyone along with them in their family like they would have before. And nobody's that interested, or at least the majority of the folks that were don't seem to be anymore based on the sales figures. So in saying all that, what do you guys think? I mean, I was trying to put together a standalone video on this, and it was much better a topic for a live show, because the more I would dive into this, I would get hung up on, say, Mopar stuff. Then I would get hung up on Ford and Chevy. And then it was, well, what about the imports? So anyway, Hard Rock is in. What's up, man? Hope you're having a good one, brother. But anyway, the idea here is, have you, dear viewer, found yourself becoming less and less interested in that topic? in muscle cars? Have you been burned by that hobby, that lifestyle, what have you in the past? I think it's one of those things that you do have to look at from a financial standpoint, though. And I think that is the key thing that is killing it for a lot of folks. Look, it used to be that a Mustang GT, right, would cost what, $12,000, $13,000 in the 90s. Well, a lot of folks were making $25,000, $35,000 back then. And notice how that hasn't gone up a whole lot. But the car didn't represent a full year's worth of salary. It was just part of something that you did. It was a car payment. That's all it was. But it wasn't as crippling financially as it is today. Yet most people don't make $75,000 a year, but that seems to be about what you would have to spend to get the car that you would really want. If we're talking about the Mustang, or say a couple of years ago, one of the Mopars or one of the Camaros. So I do feel like that is starting to decline, but it's declining in another area. And before I dive into that, let me check in with those that are in. X is in. What's going on? Saying the muscle car is dead and manufacturers killed it. Yeah, that's definitely a big part of it. Hard Rock saying muscle car culture is a powerful thing stemming from generations of people. Well, it is, and at least it was, but man, I got to tell you, it does seem to be dwindling. Ron saying 40% of the cost of a car is electronics. It's a good point. So with so many safety features now basically baked into these cars, could you imagine what a Mustang GT, say a 1992 Mustang, would have cost if it had all of the extracurricular stuff that these modern cars have? I mean, it would easily be at least 50% more expensive, right? But it's not just that aspect of it. I mean, these things are, again, they are prohibitively expensive. And I'll take it in another direction. Let's get away from modern muscle cars for just a minute. What about old school muscle cars? Your Chevelles, your Road Runners, your Camaros, old school Mustangs, AMC stuff, and the like. Here's one area where I can tell you unequivocally that the hobby is well in its way down. I have been looking online for a long time for a car. It doesn't matter what kind of car it is, but it would be a car for the channel. It would be something that I would build, and it would be something that would be a lot of fun. Not necessarily keep it forever, though. It would be something that would be really more just an exercise and cool stuff that you can do with an old school car. And the more I was looking into it just a couple of years ago, the prices have begun to be a lot more reasonable. The market was just way overinflated just a couple of years ago. But the problem is the market just keeps dropping. Cars that were, say, $10,000, $12,000, where you just kind of roll your eyes and go, there's no way. Those are down into the $7,000 range, and they're still for sale. There's guys that have sunk a ton of money into these cars and now are finding that nobody wants them anymore. People are starting to look at it and they just go, yeah, passing fad, passing fancy. And they just don't want to deal with them anymore. The headaches of sourcing parts and the rebuild and all of the expense, all of the time that it's going to take to get those cars back up and running, folks just don't want to have anything to do with it anymore. It's way too easy to get significantly better performance out of just a generic grocery getter nowadays than it would be to get some kind of respectable performance out of a big block insert whatever car from back in the day. At least not without a ton of investment put into those cars. And with as many bad experiences that people have had with those old school classic cars basically being Bondo bombs. I mean, the things that some of the flipper stories, if you've never heard them, are heartbreaking. It happens a lot with Corvettes, by the way, where the car looks great and you drive it and it feels like it drives great. You don't really know what to look for, only to find out that the frame underneath all that fiberglass is basically rotted away. There's been that. There's been tons of Bondo on insert whatever car that you see coming across that Mecum auction stage. Yeah, that has really been a problem for folks. So the more people that have been turned off by this, and the more that that market starts to crash, I'm left to kind of wonder what happens to those cars. Really cool cars too. You know, it's one of those things that I look at it and I go, damn, man, I'd love a Mark III Continental, or rather a Mark III Lincoln. But here's the problem. Whether it's a Mark III Lincoln, a deuce and a quarter Buick, a Coupe de Ville, which I'm a huge Coupe de Ville guy. Whether it's any of those cars, what do you do with them? Parts availability becomes tough. Aftermarket, the care, maintenance, and everything else, it becomes difficult to justify having a car that, well, it doesn't accelerate, it doesn't brake, it doesn't handle anywhere near as well as any of these modern vehicles do. It's kind of strange. But you notice I've been focusing on the domestic hot rods for the first part of this chat. Haven't really had a chance to dive into the imports. You know, old school BMWs. Those are actually starting to creep up. Not really on the Mercedes-Benz side too much, but yeah, the old school Volvos, yeah, they're starting to get quite a bit of love. You've also got your run-of-the-mill, I don't really want to, if I can call it that, but the old school Datsun 240s, 260s, 280s. These cars are starting to pick up, but these are more Cold War kid oriented. And the thing is that there's nothing that any of the manufacturers today are doing to start to capture what is starting to turn into a bit of a new renaissance for the European market hot rods. The not exactly a muscle car cars that a lot of folks found very endearing. You know, that first generation RX-7, for example, another car that's coming up. The Japanese cars are starting to get some traction. Conquest sales, Starion sales, those figures are starting to go up. So it's not cars that you just can't get parts for. It's not that those cars are tough to get parts for too, just like the American stuff. So why is there more of a push or a drive towards those machines? I think it's just, it's a real thing. It's the toxic nature of muscle car culture, the constant driving of power, the constant almost berating of the tuner culture when it comes to American cars that you don't see with the stuff from overseas. I mean, yeah, I get it. You get some hardheads that are going to be running GTRs, but the reality is that there's a lot more accepting in the European and Japanese markets for cars. Get some conditioned air in here for cars that are just cool. And that's kind of the funny part about it. So anyway, just some, how do I put it? Just some observations from me that I've been seeing lately when it comes to what I'm seeing in the market right now. And when I look at what is out there for sale and what I would personally buy, I've lost all interest in American muscle cars, only because there's nothing new about them. And there's nothing that I can get excited about when the flipper market has gotten so bad and so pervasive that you would be way better off buying a car that is an old survivor, an old driver, than anything that you're going to see rolling across an auction block. And like I say, I've just heard and I've seen a handful, but a handful is a lot more than I should have seen when it comes to what these flipper guys are doing with these cars. And it's just a real bummer. So let's see. Yeah, well, the throwaway jab cars are doing really good on the market right now. So it is that. By the way, American cars are pretty much throwaway nowadays too. So there is that. Um, Hard Rock saying he's always loved muscle cars, and for me, it'll never die. Yeah, individually, yeah, I can. It's easy to love them, but the problem is as much as I do love them, man, I got to tell you, it's becoming more and more difficult to justify the expense of actually diving into one of these cars. And look, I'm kind of one to talk. I've got the Fox body. You got to remember the Fox body is now considered classic. I mean, do you factor that into old school muscle cars? Because if so, I've got one. It's sitting right on the other side of that wall, and I got a chance to drive it the other day, and it's a riot to drive. But again, even with Fox bodies, you're seeing the price really start to wing over. X is saying, I keep dreaming of getting a Gen 5 Viper because before I die, but even those are going for McLaren prices. It's insane. Man, explain that one to me. The Viper thing is weird. What's weird about the Viper is that Gen 2s, the pricing is just, it's everywhere. It's all over the board. But they're holding their value exceptionally well. And the Gen 5 is an awesome car. The Gen 2 is not. But the Gen 5 just, it's holding its value like crazy. I'll tell you a car that the only American car right now that I still have just a super crush on is the C7 Z06. I'll always have a crush on that bike or on that car. Looking at my bike over here. Skids is in. Good evening, B. Got the ball guy with the flex and the specs. I like it. Ron said, if money were no object, I'd get a new DeLorean and put an LS engine in it. You know, it's funny. In Houston, that is where DeLorean DMC is located. Surprised they don't do more of the I'm surprised they don't do more of the LS swap in those cars. Hard Rock saying you can do old school builds for reasonable pricing like a Nova, Chevelle, or 68 Camaro. Man, reasonable? We need a definition of terms here. Listen, the Nova, there is a Nova right there. Okay, literally right there. Perfectly good Nova. That guy will not let, and it is a bucket of bolts basically. That guy will not let that car go for less than 5 figures. There's another blue one. That one, the one I'm talking about is a 68 or 69. There's a blue 72 that dude won't let that car go for less than about 25 grand. And again, these are 3-speed cars with old school 350s in them, basically. Chevelles are tough because Chevelles are bad with flippers. Those things are, all of them are, but get ready. You got to really pick and choose a Chevelle. There's a lot of Bondo involved with that. And of course, the Camaros, man, those things are all over the board, but yeah, you're still going to be looking at a pretty decent chunk of money. Ron saying, from what I understand, the old SBC engines are really cheap now. They have always been really cheap. The thing is so if you were to ask Summit Racing or Jegs or anybody else, what do they sell the most parts for in their catalog? It's still all SBC stuff. The SBC, which small block Chevy guys, is in essence the 350. So whether we're talking about a 383 stroker or you're doing a high RPM 327 build, it's all based around the same architecture in essence, right? 4-inch bore, 3.5-inch stroke, you get the idea. And it's an amazing platform. You can build 400 cubic inches, you can build 383 cubic inches, and you can have a lot of fun with those things. But the thing is that I will say this, a lot of guys are moving away from LS swaps, and they're all going SBC Turbo 400 and leaving it alone, or SBC 700R4, I should say, and really leaving it alone because guys have figured out that 3-speed cars have shit for resale value. The guys that have converted to 700R4 or to 4L60 or 4L80 in some cases, those are the guys that are doing the best. If just a 700R4 with a Corvette valve body. That's it. Let her rip. That thing will hold all the power that small block will ever put out, and it's a riot to drive. Throw a set of 355 gears out back and just have a very fun driver. A lot of guys are sticking with the SBC because you can still make 400 plus horsepower. And I mean real honest to goodness 400 plus horsepower with modern heads, intakes, carburetors, things of that nature, and just let her go. The only downside to the SBC is if you don't switch it over to fuel injection, which is a real difficult thing to do. It's a real hard thing to justify in an SBC to begin with. But I would still recommend some type of a in-tank fuel pump, just a low PSI intake fuel pump with a return. You set it up like that and you will have modern car reliability in all weather. I've already proven that with Sierra. It's going to run great, but if you've got to do it right by today's fuel, because today's fuel is what pisses off carburetors and causes vapor lock, which is never cool. Then you're stuck for about 30 minutes while the whole thing cools off. Skid saying I'd kicked around doing an OBS Ford or Chevy, but they are going to the moon. I'll tell you what, locally, OBS Fords, easy to get your hands on. OBS Chevys, their value has absolutely dumped. These guys that were trying to get $25,000, $30,000 for an OBS boxy Chevy, a lot of those guys are starting to find out that market's dried up. The trucks that would have sold have already sold. And now guys are moving more into, and they're figuring this stuff out, that you can get a cat's eye Chevy for practically pennies on the dollar for an OBS truck. You've got an LS already in it. You've got an electronic overdrive transmission already in it. And you can stance it, have it look fantastic. No, it's not a boxy, but man, I'm here to tell you, there's a lot of guys that have gone the boxy route that you will hear lament their experience with it. Ron's saying 13B rotaries are getting past the old problems they had. True, you got much better sealing in them too. Mitz is liking the Hondas. Love me some old school Hondas. Captain saying, have a question. Why did 15, 16 Hellcats come with a MAF sensor? It's a good question. And the 17s that got removed, I thought they used MAP sensors only. What was the MAF for? It was a check. So it's a good question. It's literally nowhere in the tune. Either, by the way, for the 15, 16 cars. It is a secondary measurement of the air. It's almost like a vestigial organ. The computer doesn't really care about the MAP sensor, if I'm being honest, in the tune. I never made any changes using a MAF curve. It is literally there as a means to affirm what the speed density, for lack of a better way of putting it, if you're looking at it from an old school point of view, that's what it's doing. That's literally all it's doing. That car, under any circumstance, is going off of your load, your fuel map, and your timing. That's it. Skid's asking, what car did Smokin' get? So, Smokin' Hot's my wife. So Smokin' Hot did get a new car, and it's a car that is going to be on the channel. And this car for me represents what Dodge should have made with the new Hurricane Inline 6. So I don't want to beat around the bush too much with this. It's going to get its own reveal, but I'll put it to you like this. It is a 3-liter. It is an inline 6. It does have 2 turbos on it. And, it came out. This car was released about the same year that the Hellcats were. And the funny thing is, I got to looking at that car and I was thinking, if Dodge only took a page out of what BMW did back in the day, they would never have made the new Charger. And it is so painful to watch what is happening to Dodge right now. For me, it is, because you have to remember, guys, Dodge and Mopar content, that paid the rent, that put food on the table for a long time for me. And man, I got to tell you, it kills me to see where that whole company and where their heart's at and the soul of that company and everything. It just pains me to see where all that is gone. Skid saying if it's too soon, it's not a problem. No, it will be coming soon enough. Cam's asking, what's the max horsepower the stock fuel pump can handle on a regular 707 Hellcat? Okay, don't worry about the max horsepower. You never want to get to that point. And so what's the max horsepower the stock fuel pump can handle on a regular 707? And the question really is 285 pulley safe with stock fuel pump on pump gas? Okay, I'm going to answer. Let's have a seat. The stock fuel pump can handle easily a 295. A 285 is about as aggressive as I would get with the stock fuel pump if you are at sea level. If you're above sea level, then you're safe. In other words, let's say your actual physical elevation that you live at is 1,000 feet. Then yes, you're good with a 285. If you're not, I would never suggest a 285 on a stock fuel pump on pump gas. The reason for that is the following. One, the stock fuel pumps have a nasty habit of going out. I have every Hellcat that's on the road today that is over 4 years old, 5 years old, needs a new fuel pump. Ask me how I know. I'm the guy that was data logging my car, Orange Crush's car, Mean Cat's car. All of us needed fuel pumps literally within almost the same 4 to 6 month period. And my car and Orange Crush literally had to have fuel pumps replaced within a week of each other. So what am I getting on about? What happens is that fuel pump will start to not be able to keep up with demand, especially in colder weather. And you'll see this in data logs where you'll be looking for 75 to 80 PSI and you're only seeing 60. Now, there is a little bit of a window that you can work with, but once you start seeing that deterioration of fuel pressure, you need to put a fuel pump in it. The problem is you'll never know this unless you're data logging your car. So I kind of answered both questions there. 295 is the smallest pulley I would run on pump gas just in general for a Hellcat. And that is based on my experience with fuel quality in general. I've got a Brazilian passes on dynos with my car, customers' cars, etc. And I can tell you that fuel quality varies wildly. So err on the side of caution and you'll be in great shape. Guys, remember, I was setting national records with a car that made the lowest horsepower on the dyno of any of the cars that I was tuning, driving, or working on. All right. So it's not about a horsepower number either, but just know that the stock fuel pump can manage a good amount of power. And this is on gasoline, no additives or anything like that. But don't get greedy with it. As long as you know that, as long as you're data logging your car, making sure that, once a month you get it out, get a nice long watt hit with it, make sure that your fuel pressure is good, then keep rocking it. The second you see that issue with the fuel pressure starting to deteriorate, go ahead and swap it out. It's easy as hell. It takes me longer to get the tools together than it does to actually do the work to swap out a fuel pump. And but I'll tell you this, it's no fun because it's very expensive. So just keep that in the back of your mind. Destroyer saying, slap that like pedal, y'all. What's up, Destroyer 1320? Don't forget, get over to Destroyer 1320's website, Destroyer, put your website up. Make sure that you are getting your neutral safety switch lockout covers. I'm telling you, the guy that bought my car had his car stolen because he did not have a Destroyer 1320 cover on his car. Mine had the cover. Mine had the dealership RF the hub, the RF hub lockout done to it. So I'd taken some precautions, but yeah, make sure that you guys are getting your lockout covers for those cars. It's too easy to steal without it. Steady Eddie saying the square body truck is coming back. Man, I'll tell you what, I'd like to see where it's coming back. I've seen prices on those trucks hemorrhaging lately. I put it like this: the same truck that sold for $22,000, $23,000 as a really clean resto mod, selling for $16,000, $17,000 now. And that's if you can find somebody to buy it at that number. I will tell you a truck that's doing really well right now are OBS Fords. And of the OBS Fords, y'all want to know the truck that's getting some of the most love? It's the 6-cylinder 5-speed, the 300 inline 6 trucks. I couldn't believe it, but those trucks are getting a ton of love out there in the marketplace. Hex is saying now they saw everyone's willing to basically double their car payments, so they're starting to double their car prices. I'll tell you what, I am out of the business of buying a new vehicle that's not like directly associated with work. Sam says he's addicted to marketplace, found a lot of 440 boat motors. Yeah, I don't mess with I can't get on marketplace for too long. It drives me nuts. Cap saying I have a friend who had a 285 pulley and intake, basic stuff. His spark plug melted, scored the cylinder. What do you think would cause this? Bad gas is a really good bad reason for that. A really good reason for bad things to happen. Oh, Destroyer saying, yeah, use code Mason for 10% off. Guys, get your covers. So here's the thing. Bad gas, poor fueling, weak fuel pump could have done that. There's a lot that can be, I should say, associated with what has happened to him. NGK, yeah, the sevens. I can't remember the part number off the top of my head. Used to be able to rattle it off. The 7 heat range. I mean, we got guys that were making 1,000 horsepower. Shit, we had guys that were making 800 horsepower on pump gas that never had a problem with the stock NGK plugs. So the only plug I would say to move away from is Brisk, only because I had a nightmare situation happen with a set of Brisk plugs. And I swore I'd never use those things ever again. Oh, DM's in saying, good evening, chat friends. I hit the like button on my way in. Very nice. Yes, slam that like pedal to the floor, fellas. Helps with that old algorithm. DM's hanging out with the fellas. Steady Eddie, is the Chevy Corvette a muscle car? Negative. No, I don't believe it is. Sam saying, no, it is not. Skid saying, been doing a lot of riding in the heat. Got to take the good with the bad here in Texas, and it's only June. Dude, it is crazy hot. Yeah, it's been nuts. I was out on the Bonneville today having a ball with that thing. Actually, me and Smoking Hot went for a little ride on that thing today. It's pretty fun. Skid's checking in with Sam. Sam saying, nor is the Thunderbird. No, the Vet, I don't really ever consider that to be a muscle car, although it can do muscle car things. The Corvette has always been to me a sports car, and that is separate and removed from muscle car. Sharp saying, love the Suzuki shirt. Yes. Dude, speaking of Suzuki, my gosh, the waiting's the hardest part, so said Tom Petty. I am still waiting on the exhaust to show up for the 750, and I've had a chance to ride the 1000 lately, which is kind of breaking my heart a little bit because I do go through withdrawals if I don't get a chance to ride that GSX-R 1000. I kind of get love riding that bike. So especially in the heat, that bike, the funny thing about the GSX-R 1000 is that in the heat, everything is a little bit more compliant. The bike's not necessarily super frantic with the power that it makes, but it's making a ton of power anyway. But that bike is just so good all the way around. I find myself just itching to go riding that thing. And I do. And it's every time I ride it, I don't video every time I go riding, by the way. As many videos as I put out, you would think that I do. But there are times where I will grab that bike and just go make a practice run. And when I'm making a practice run, it's probably best that I'm not videotaping some of those. So anyway, but yeah, that bike is a freaking riot. Oh, Tim's asking, love the shirt. Thank you very much. How's the pipe going at the GSX-R 750? So we're still waiting. Dallas, Texas got hit with some terrible weather over the course of a full week, about a couple of weeks ago, if memory serves me correctly in terms of timeline. And that's where M4 is located. And so because of that, they are way behind. It was 2 to 3 weeks behind. They're really 3 to 4 weeks, and that's being optimistic. So we're probably sitting at another, I don't know, you're probably sitting at another week or so before I'm even going to get a sniff of those pipes. Skid saying the T-Bird Turbo was a fun little 80s car, probably the 80s nostalgia talking. Could have been a lot more potent than what it was too. Sam saying he loves the 9195 Fox Thunderbirds, as well as the 4-door T-Birds. I tell you what, there is a certain part of me that would absolutely kill to build a Fairmont. And I don't want to get rid of my Fox body to do it, but man, I'm a little bit more, I lean a little bit more heavily towards the Fairmonts than I do the Mustangs. So just saying, if I ever ran across a 2-door Fairmont, I would probably scoop it up. Cap saying he was looking at some Red Eye fuel pumps and say our dual, is there a way to fit the Red Eye pumps in our regular Hellcats? Can get good deals on eBay, but since we only have one module controller, man, to be honest with you, it's not going to do you a whole lot of good to run the twin pumps. It's not really you're not really getting much for that. If I were to do twin pumps, I wouldn't go that route. I'd go aftermarket. I'd get a 4-fuel system and go with a set of solid aftermarket pumps. The Red Eye pumps are not necessarily going to be better than that. And for me, it's just an easier fix. You don't have to replace one full module. You can just replace pumps if you need to. Plus, I think it's a little bit cheaper to go that route too. And listen, like I say, I wouldn't swap out pumps just to swap out pumps on a Hellcat. The later pumps are better, but these are issues with cars that can age out over time, and it's just something to be aware of. And if you got a car and you're putting any kind of work into it, you got to be data logging it. There's stuff that can go weird with these cars. Again, fuel quality, fuel pumps acting up. There are wheel speed sensors that act weird. There's things that you can monitor that are always going to be very valuable. So another one is monitoring your air fuel. Obviously, short-term knock retard is a big part of that. So many other reasons other than the fuel pump to be data logging, which I'm sure you would know. This kid saying, I can vouch for some crap weather a couple of weeks ago. Hope that pipe gets to you soon. It'll get here eventually. By the way, while it's in, hold please. So as it is in there waiting, I don't know if you guys know this, but I got that bike completely stripped down and ready for them to put the exhaust on. You might go, why did you do all the hard stuff and let them do the fun stuff? Well, I don't mess with cooling systems anymore at all. So anyway, And for that bike, you really do need to pull the radiator off of it. And I really didn't want to fool with that. But in the meantime, we do have the Heel-Tech quick shifter has made it to the party. So I will be putting a quick shifter on that bike, and I will be installing it. And I'm going to be showing you guys how to install a Heel-Tech on your GSX-R 750, but I'm going to show you how to do it to where it will not interfere with blip downshifting. So the way that I'm going to install this and the way that this is going to be programmed is that it will only be a quick shifter on upshift, not on downshift. Let's see. Oh, Sam, I know what you're talking about with the late T-Birds. I just want a Fairmont. Let's see. Bear with me just a sec. Let me get back up here, guys. By the way, I got to ask, how does the live look tonight? Is it looking good? We've been having hell during the week with Two Wheel Tuesdays. I don't know what the deal is. It's not an internet connectivity thing. I don't know what it is, but I've been having a hell of a problem with that. Skid saying lives looks good. Sweet. Hard Rock saying Fairmonts are killer. Dude, I would build a two-door Fairmont like right flipping freaking now. In fact, it's one of the few cars that for me are like on-site purchases. My wife and I damn near bought a two-door Yukon the other day. Before we bought her car. But if I were to do another build, I would just have to move the Mustang out of the way, do something with it, and build that Fairmont. Let's see. Steady saying a car's got a fuel filter and fuel pump. Let's see. Oh, Cap saying, I really wish there wasn't a Hellcat. If they wish they put a knock retard gauge in the Uconnect performance pages. I tell you what, I know what you're talking about. Here's the other thing. Why don't they have an adjustable pedal sensitivity? Like, why can't I go into comfort mode for my accelerator pedal programming? My ETC map, if you will, electronic throttle control map. Why don't I have a sport mode for it? Why don't I have, a valet mode for it? Because what I did with my car also is if I put that car in valet mode, what it would do is it would limit the throttle to like 3%. So when my car was in valet mode, if you did figure out a way to get a key to work with it to start it, because you couldn't make a key for it, the RF hub was locked out. I had my Destroyer 1320 plate in, so you couldn't, not unless you had some serious power tools, you're not going to push it out of there. If you did get it to start and put your foot to the floor, it would do like 7 miles an hour, 8 miles an hour. And I did all of that in my tune because I just didn't want it to get stolen. But the funny thing is that, yeah, the knock retard thing would be a really good function to have, because it could say, hey, man, listen, the tank of gas you got is bad. Don't mess around, right? Or you could have the pedal sensitivity go, man, I just kind of want to chill with this thing. I don't necessarily need it to be all the time. Just reduce that. That could so easily be done. And why they don't do it, I have no idea. It ain't like the technology ain't there. But I agree with you 100% on that. Used to drive me nuts. I was the same way. I was like, God, do I have to log into this thing it just drove me nuts. Sam saying there was a Capri near him. I tell you what, Capris are sweet if you can find them. Hard Rock saying the broadcast is good tonight. Man, that's good. Like I say, we've been having hell with Two Wheel Tuesdays lately. I don't know what the deal is during the week, but it has been brutal. Skid saying that guy on a few years ago on YouTube with the white two-door Fairmont that's coyote swapped. Yeah, that would be pretty sick. Coyote swap with a 6R80 and a set of 373 gears. And that's it. It would look like a Men in Black car, have a nice looking stance on it with some dog dish hubcaps. That's it. Long tube headers, an H pipe. And I mean, what more do you need, right? So yeah, that would be the build. I mean, it would really, I wouldn't do it. Hell no, I wouldn't do that myself. I just say, do y'all do coyote swamps? Here, put whatever coyote you find in this thing and let's go make some noise. And I can promise you it would be a low 11-second car just the way it sat. Very fun stuff. But with that, guys, I figured I would just post that question out for you. Going to be a little bit of a short show tonight about the muscle car. You know, for me, it's a real shame because cool stuff is out there. You know, cars like that Aspen that I'm hoping one day I could find, you know, the guy that owns it, or at least if I did find him, talk him out of that car. You know, maybe you could get something like that on the cheap. If, you know, the neater, older school cars, the one-offs, the stuff that's a little bit different, that's what I'm more attracted to. The problem is that the more mainstream cars, they're getting a lot of they're starting to hemorrhage value because there was a COVID bubble, I'll admit, but even before that, the cars were just way overpriced. And now that you've got so many people that are kind of moving past that, you're starting to see those prices drop. A lot of Cold War kid era cars that are coming up. Man, I got to tell you, it would be a really cool time to build your favorite car from that era. The Fairmont, the Starion, you know, maybe start to look at some of these early 2000s cars. You know, we're starting to blend in a couple of generations here. There's some stuff that's going to be coming up that's pretty cool that might be a bit more attractive than the old school back in the day muscle cars. One of those, I hate to say it, it's a car that I've always had a crush on, being SRT4, build something front wheel drive. Anyway, there's a lot of different ways that you can go when it comes to building a hot rod or a project car, but the old school muscle car, as it would be traditionally understood to be, I think is starting to feel the pinch a little bit. And with Dodge not doing anything to help the situation out whatsoever, and them really not doing much with, how do I put this? With them not really doing much with the Charger that they have, it's going to be a pretty big ask for folks that that may want to support that kind of lifestyle and hobby through a more modern car. I just don't see it happening with Mopar, and with Ford being untunable, it's kind of leaving a lot of guys out in the dark right now. But with that, guys, I'm going to check in with the rest of you guys, and I'm going to check out. Let's see. Eddie saying they ruined a car with touchscreen and touch buttons. The touchscreen, I'll tell you what, that's one of the turnoffs for me for the Hellcat, was that Uconnect issue. Sam's asking whether a Lincoln built on the Fox platform. Mark 7, yes. Hard Rock saying tons of YouTube channels out there with muscle car enthusiasts. Yeah, there are. And they are very aspirational at that. I'll tell you what, I would love to have the kind of money that they have to be able to sink into them, because my little channel doesn't make that kind of money. So, yeah. So good luck with that. Captain's asking, can 707 Hellcat stock piston rods handle 1,000 wheel horsepower safely? The later ones can. I heard they don't. Why does Dodge make weak pistons compared to Ford 5.0, which takes a lot of abuse? You got to remember that the Hellcat has to deal with a lot more weight than the Mustang does. And by the way, the Hellcat platform I have seen take abuse that Mustangs would have disintegrated having to deal with. And that is just the reality of it. I mean, I know that the Mustangs can be fast, but again, they don't have a lot of weight to deal with, and they have RPM on their side also. So the Dodge making the kind of torque that it does, especially where in the RPM range that it does, it puts a lot of stress on some parts. So, but yeah, 1,000 wheel horse, and again, I don't like talking horsepower because your 1,000 wheel horsepower on a dyno jet is my 830 horsepower on a Mustang dyno. And so that's why it's hard to really get into the horsepower chat when it comes to that. But look, here's the thing. If you want to make big boy horsepower, understand why you want to do that. Do you want to roll race? Do you want to drag race? Or you just want a dyno car, so you can have bragging rights. Like, man, this thing makes X number of power and I get to drive it. Because first of all, you're never going to play. Oh, the other thing too is what you also have to remember, the Hellcat is boosted by a positive displacement supercharger that has a lot of parasitic loss. A Coyote with a turbo setup has a lot less parasitic loss, and therefore there's less power consumed in the process of putting horsepower to the rear tires. The horsepower that a IHI 2400 will use, that's the stock supercharger on a Hellcat, it's somewhere around 130 horsepower that it takes to just turn the supercharger. Once you start to calculate like what it puts down to the rear tires, add 130 to it, that's what the rods are seeing. All right. If that car were turbocharged, because turbocharging is significantly more efficient, then that parasitic loss is going to really be more along the lines of, say, 70 horsepower, 60 horsepower. But here's the thing. At no time does the crankshaft ever really see the full brunt of that loss, because it's only on the exhaust stroke that you are producing any back pressure in the turbo. The power stroke is 100% forced air fed. So when you think of it like that, it's kind of a little bit different way of looking at it. The power stroke is what is used to turn the supercharger. Turbochargers, you'll always hear me say this, are a cheat code. That's why they're so good. You're using the exhaust stroke, which is in essence, you're opening up the valve early. With a turbo cam, you're getting all of this excess pressure out of there anyway. That's what makes it so great. So again, I understand what you're asking, but you've got to understand, and I understand what you're saying too, but there is a world of difference going on from a physics point of view. And we haven't even gotten into harmonics or anything like that come with those superchargers either. So, but yeah, and that's just kind of the way that it works out. But I've had to explain that a lot over the years. And the thing is, again, I have seen Hellcats deal with some shit, bro, like weird, bad stuff. So I will always put Hellcat at the top of the list in terms of being able to handle abuse. And it'll do so way better than its counterparts, usually. But it's at the expense of being incredibly heavy, and it's usually not the fastest of the group. It can handle abuse the best. It's the most durable, but it's also the slowest of the group. Hard Rock saying Dodge is bringing back the Hemi. I mean, that's great. The only problem with Dodge bringing back the Hemi, though, is that the car itself is so heavy. The car itself is so much heavier with the Hemi than it is with its inline six cousins. The only reason why Dodge is putting that engine into that car is because there is a group of folks that will not buy that car without a V8. That's it. For whatever reason. Speaking of six cylinders that are waking up, somebody's going out to make some hits out in Velocito. But I get it. Look, it's a different driving experience, 100%. I can tell you this. you cannot take an L in a Hemi powered car versus a Hurricane 6 car. Like you will have guys crying about it. Well, at least mine's not. Yours has turbos. There's always going to be a baked in excuse when we're talking about the Hemi powered cars versus the 6. They're going to get stomped by the 6-cylinder cars, but we're not buying that car with a Hemi for the performance. We're buying it for the sound. And look, you can put the Hellcat variant motors in that car. Great. Nobody will be able to afford them. And it'll still be slower than the cars that it's replacing. So there's that. I'll tell you what, Skids saying if it was a 3,500-ish pound car with a 6.4, then sign me up. How about a 3,500 or 3,700 pound car with an inline 6 twin turbo? Even better. And that's what I'm going to be bringing to you guys soon enough once, I'm going to try to get a video going next week with Smoking Hot's car. Because I'm telling you, the architecture is there. They could have built this car. They built a brand new platform for this thing. They weighed too much. They were too heavy on the EV side. They should have known better. The car should have been smaller, accommodate the twin turbo inline 6, make it all-wheel drive even because, well, the car that I'm going to bring you is rear-wheel drive, but there is an all-wheel drive variant of it. See where I'm going with this? But yeah, it could have been done. Okay, so for you guys that have stuck around long enough, I'm just going to let the cat out of the bag. My wife and I I got to pick the car out. It's a 2015 435i M-Spec BMW. I have loved these cars for forever. And it is the gorgeous dark gray with the red interior, the exact car I would have ordered back in 2015. And it is the car that Dodge should have snapped to when people started talking about inline 6s and twin turbos. There's so many places you can look. It's an N35 and it's got the electronic wastegate, which means it has the bigger turbo and it has the bigger downpipe. It is a freaking sweetheart of a car. And I'm telling you right now, that thing is an adorable, just happy as hell car to drive. I love that it's an M-Spec because it's got the performance pages. It's got all of that. So, it's rated at 305 horsepower. It puts 305 horsepower to the rear tires, right? So it's not the full M series. It is the M-Spec. So it's a step down, but you get the better suspension and you get a more compliant ride out of this thing. And with a stage 1 tune, this thing will put down 340 to 370 to the rear tires in a car that only weighs 3,700 pounds when it's completely wet, full of fuel, probably with luggage and me and my wife in it. So that's the cool thing about it. So, there's the cat out of the bag. If Dodge would have just taken a look at those cars, we wouldn't be having this discussion right now, number one. Number two, I would have one sitting right behind me if they were to have built a car like my wife's car. So, yeah, there's that. I like this car so much that I actually thought about moving the Fox body along and potentially picking up this car's bigger brother. But yeah, there is that. And by the way, when done, and it also, did I mention that it has the ZF transmission in it? Like, it's got an HP transmission in it, just like the Hellcats, just like the Scat Packs, just like the trucks, same manufacturer. So Skid saying, put the car on the live next Saturday? Possibly. We'll see. Didn't see Captain's question. Is there any benefit to raising the RPM shift point to 6? No, don't do it. No. Captain, I set every record that you could set with a stock boost 93 octane Hellcat. And no, I didn't. Matter of fact, No. Again, just don't try to stretch the RPM out on that thing. It's not going to do you any good. And I don't mind telling you, I talk to the guys that were actually out there doing it year after year. Me and Mopar Tim were going at each other for a long time. But yeah, no, I would not raise the RPM. It's just not necessary. The car, let me tell you this. In reality, that car plateaus after about 6,300 RPM. There's no reason to run it past that. Shift it where it makes peak power and take advantage of the torque hit. But yeah, no, like I say, I'm a big fan of cars like the 4 Series because this car has a real back seat. This car has a very comfortable interior. It's got an interior very Mopar-ish, if you will. So it's a real nice place to stay. There's a lot of things that Dodge, if they would have just woken up one day and found themselves walking through one of those dealerships when they knew they were going to have an inline 6 twin turbo, like what inline 6 cars have done well? Well, let's take a look at it. I mean, you got mainly BMW to look at. They've been pioneering these inline 6s since the earth cooled. And well, they had the 3 Series and they got into the 4 Series. Man, those things are awesome, man. People absolutely adore those cars. Yeah, let's build a car that's bigger than the car that we had before. Wait a minute, Frank, that's not what we're... No, just hear me out. Frank, just listen to me. This is going to make total sense. Yeah, BMW, they sold every 4 Series they ever made, whether it's an M-Spec, an M-Series, or a base car. Yeah, and a lot of those had naturally aspirated inline 6s, but the fast ones had the twin turbos, right? Yeah, okay. But why were they so fast? Well, Frank, it's because they were smaller. Yeah. Okay, let's make it bigger. Let's make this car as big as an early 2000s S-Class Mercedes, because let's be honest, I mean, the old car really was nothing more than an E-Class Mercedes. Remember, that old car was built off the W211 and W212 chassis, which was a Mercedes chassis. So yeah, let's go ahead and do that. Make it bigger and heavier, and then let's put that inline 6 in it. Oh, they don't want the 6, they want the Hemi? Oh shit. Okay, that makes a lot less power than our engines do, don't they? Yeah, they do. We're gonna have to do a complete redesign to put that engine in there. Yeah, it's gonna have to be a complete redesign, and it's gonna weigh even more, right? Yeah, it's gonna weigh a lot more. It's about 200 pounds more. Oh, okay, that sounds like a good idea. See what I mean? This doesn't make any sense. This literally would have written itself. So DM said, I like the 5 Series too. Bro, I love 5 Series BMWs. M5s are really nice. Cap's asking, what's your advice on pointing the Hellcat snout? Realistically, any gains? No. Say with a 295 pulley intake and tune? No. Snout versus full port on boost dropping on certain RPMs? Don't worry about it. Look, here's the funny thing. I had a guy, oh my gosh, this was so embarrassing too. I had a guy bring his car in. This was about a month before I left Pikes. And he's going, yeah, man, I got a ported snout. I got this, that, and all this other stuff. Dude, all his ported snout amounted to was somebody taking a flapper wheel to it and roughing it up. It was dimensionally identical to a stock snout. No, look, I've done some, okay. Some cars can pick up with a ported snout, but you've got to absolutely put in work on the snout and run a much larger throttle body. It's not worth it. You run into surging issues potentially. It just ain't worth it. Look, you're at this stage of the game, everything that you can do to make more power is in the pulley and the tune. Even removing the catalytic converters. Guys, I set records with the stock catalytic converters still on the car. All right. Like everything about my car was still as stock as you could possibly get it. So when I tell you that, like, what about removing the catalytic converters? Will that help? No. We even had a car go slower pulling the cats, and the DA wasn't that much worse. It was like another 200 feet higher. No, don't worry about removing the cats. Don't worry about porting the snout. I know that you're going to have some pie in the sky stuff tell you that it's going to be better. Not necessarily. I have, though, if I'm being honest, seen some snouts that maybe could have benefited from a little bit of porting. And it had to do with the casting, though. The casting itself just had a little bit smaller opening. That happened on a friend of mine's red eye. My Hellcat's snout was like a normal, like a 95, 96 millimeters, whatever it is. And his was like a half a millimeter smaller. That's the car we used to test the ported throttle bodies with. But in reality, like real numbers, just make sure your throttle body is centered on your snout, and that's really all you have to worry about. Itch is asking, why are there no larger displacement inline six cylinders, or is there? About the biggest you're going to find was Ford's old 300 inline six. The reason that there are not many more big six cylinders is because they have a tendency to just keep getting longer and longer and longer and taller and taller and taller. And realistically, you're going to have to kick that thing over anyway. Most manufacturers do. But I guess the reality of it is that at some point, it's just better to make the engine smaller for packaging, put it in a V configuration, and you can then have a little bit more displacement. But that's the only reason why. The six cylinder is inherently very well balanced. The next question you might be thinking of is, well, why not a big four cylinder? The secondary imbalance on a four cylinder will start to rattle that thing apart at about the 3 liter mark. They really get to a point where you can't rev them very high. Him saying diesel. They did make a diesel 5 Series, by the way. Skid saying B58 turbo is the main reason I kicked around the new Supra. Oh, awesome. Awesome engine. The B58 is the successor to the N55. Both of them are phenomenal engines, and you can make really good power with both. You can make more with the B58 if you really want to turn the wick up on one. Cab's asking a damn good question. When do you need to pin the crank on the Hellcat? Today. Some say if you go lower than 285, some say pin it even stock. They're right. Is it necessary for a 295 or a 285 realistically? Yeah, it is. It really is. Not very often, but you can find some cars that have spun the balancer a little bit. I had mine pinned and my car was stock. So, and I just had pipes while it was there one day, just go ahead and pin the crank. And the main thing is just to make sure that you put silicone behind that to make sure it doesn't weep oil out the seal. But yeah, I would say it is a good idea to pin it, especially if you're going to start throwing a lot of boost at it. Another thing is to make sure that it's, you're torqued properly. You're using all new hardware and all that stuff when you go back in there. And it doesn't happen very often where you see them spin a balancer, but it does happen. It's just saying, thank you. Ken saying, hey, B, it's been a while. I had Joker's Performance rebuild my 2.7 supercharger on the red eye because it broke. That sucks. Also had the nose ported as well. I was very pleased. Once you start spooling these things up, you're probably going to want to port the snout. And again, the snouts, I don't know what it is, but they're not consistent with how big of an opening you get. Joker's back in the day used to do a hell of a good job porting the superchargers for Lightnings. So he knows his shit for sure. DM saying Suzuki needs to make an over-square inline six and sell it to a car company. I'm pretty sure they'd leave meat on the bone for a supercharger. Dude, Suzuki would leave enough meat on the bone for turbos and nitrous. That's just what Suzuki does, baby. One of the funny things, we joke about this a lot. Suzuki is a funny brand because it never fails. It doesn't matter what those engines are rated at. They always seem to be where it counts on the street, they always seem to lay it down a little bit stronger than the specs or the dyno would ever allow you to believe. And that's one of the more fun things about the the motorcycle world. Yeah, that's why I've been doing a lot more motorcycle content lately. I've had a few of you guys ask me, hey, when am I going to start doing car content again? What's up with all this bike stuff? By the way, speaking of bike stuff, I cannot wait to get this thing on that GSX-R 750, that quick shifter. It's going to help that bike a bit. And I know I said I wasn't going to do it, but I'm going to do it. So if I'll put it like this, if I ever say I'm not going to do something, chances are if you give me 6 months, I'll probably end up doing exactly what I said I want to do. The funny thing though is that I got more into bikes now lately just because there's so much more of a diverse ecosystem of machines to choose from. And that's why I have so much fun with them. Cap saying, I really wish I could just delete the MAF sensor on my 16 Hellcat. The problem is the intake companies don't make specific 15, 16 intakes anymore with MAF. Newer non-MAF intakes are way bigger and better. I wouldn't agree with that 100%. I'm not that they don't make intakes. I'm sure they don't, but man, I did a lot of intake testing and I got to tell you, bro, I went the fastest. I've had other cars be their fastest with the stock intake, the stock airbox, and the stock filter of all things. What I would suggest doing is getting a snorkel, or for the snorkel, getting a what the hell is it? You know, the little connectors. Anyway, put something over the intake on the airbox to where you can slide the snorkel over that and take up that gap back there. It's a fiddly thing. It's just kind of a pet peeve of mine. But man, and if you really want to go fast, just take the air filter out if you don't want to have any real restriction. I know what the claims are and I get all of that, but man, and I know what they do on a dyno, but again, and I'll keep saying it, and y'all know where I'm coming from when I tell you all this. I got no reason to lie to you. I'm the guy that tuned my car. And I'm the guy that tuned Orange Crush's car. I'm the guy that did all of the transmission tuning to Mean Cat with his adjustments. There was a lot that I'd done. At one point or another, I've had my hands on a lot of Hellcats, primarily on shift points, by the way, with transmission tuning, when I was the guy that would drive the car at the track for the guys that were either spooked to take their car down the track. They'd never had a 9-second car before or whatever. I'm the guy that got the nod to do all the testing. That's why we were the first company that had a Demon go 9s at Houston Raceway Park. So there's that. Just kind of cool stuff behind the scenes. But man, we tried. I tried all kinds of intakes. JLT. So here's the funny thing. The intakes would do really well on the dyno, and then they would suck on the street because they would be sucking in hot air no matter what. And what was funny is that if you watch the Spring Nationals race, where Orange Crush and I, the two cars that I tuned, we were the exhibition class at the Spring Nationals, the last Spring Nationals at Houston Raceway Park. And we were promoting Friday Night Safe Street Race. Well, my car with it was a JLT on that car at that time. I think that's what I was testing. I had to be real careful with how much time that car idled because it would just start baking. It was underneath the hood would start getting hot. It was a real hot weekend. And that car was off by, compared to Orange Crush's car, which was heavier with my tune on it. And with good data, by the way, my car was off by, how was it, about 0.3 with the aftermarket intake. And he was running just a K&N filter in his stock enclosure. So just saying, brother.